Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 84 of the Chronological Read Through the Bible. Today's commentary covers Joshua chapter 10 through chapter 12, verse 6. Now, I have to say, if you remember in yesterday's commentary and reading, we talked about at chapter 9 how the kings of Canaan had begun to come together and discuss how they were going to deal with the Hebrew people who are invading their land. In their mind, of course, God had given this to Abraham and his descendants. Well, at this point, of course, the Gibeonites have signed their treaty partly through trickery, basically with the Hebrew people. And yesterday's lesson, I talked about how it is so important that we consult the Lord in prayer on our actions. And this is not just speaking of a biblical action. You know, it's not the thing of, Lord, should I go to Africa to be a missionary? It should also be, Lord, should I take this job? Should I go on this vacation? Or, Lord, how should I spend this bonus check that I just got? Or, Lord, do I really need to buy? So we need to involve God in our everyday life and activities. The Lord should have control over it. Remember, as I've said, the Lord is not in your life to be a visitor. He's there to be the Lord of your life, to be the owner, and to guide and direct you. And if you merely have Him as a visitor, then you don't really have the relationship that you should with the Lord, nor the one that He desires to have with you. Well, after Ai has been defeated, utterly defeated, and of course Jericho has been destroyed, and now these kings have heard about the Gibeonites having signed a treaty with the Hebrew people. They decide, we must deal with the Gibeonites. These people need to be dealt with harshly. Really, you kind of get the idea, or otherwise other groups, other tribes, other little city-states in the region may sign treaties with the Hebrew people too. So these 5 kings mount up their armies and all come to Gibeon. And Gibeon was really from what we understand in antiquity, it was a rather large city and strong and had a good army. And it shows how much fear they had of the Hebrew people. Just as the Lord had said, He would strike fear in the inhabitants of the land. And He had done just that enough that the Gibeonites had to devise their little plan of trickery. Well, as these armies now surround the city of Gibeon, they remind the Hebrew people, remember, you signed this treaty with us and we will fight for each other, defend each other. And Joshua, he clearly consults the Lord at this point, because the Lord tells him to not fear. The Lord said to Joshua in verse 8 of chapter 10, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not one of them shall stand before you." And so the Gibeonites had sent this message, hey, we're under an attack. And now the Lord has told Joshua to go and deal with the situation. And it says, so Joshua came upon them suddenly by marching all night from Gilgal. I needed to check that distance, but it's a pretty good distance. And they march. Sort of, you get that forced march concept. And all of a sudden, the Israeli army is upon them. Verse 10, and the Lord confounded them before Israel, and He slew them with great slaughter at Gibeon, and pursued them by the way of the ascent of Beth-horon, and struck them as far, and I won't try to pronounce these cities, Azekah and Mikada. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing those exactly right. But as they're fleeing from before the Lord, it's almost like maybe they're getting a little bit faster than the Hebrews, having been on their forced march the day before. So the Lord hurls hailstones upon these 5 armies and just devastates them. It says, and they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than those whom the sons of Israel killed with the sword. And we don't read of the Hebrew people or the sons of Israel, their army being struck down by these hailstones. So it shows the Lord's precise strike upon the enemy. But then there are those who are still there. In verse 12, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered the Amorites before the sons of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, O sun, stand still at Gibeon. And the sun stood still in the sky while the Hebrew army went forward, finishing the battle. I always think that it's so interesting that even though the Gibeonites have been these deceivers, that out of that deception, the Lord helps deliver Israel. That even though they had been deceived, that deception ends up being redeemed by these 5 armies being placed into their hands. And what could have been many months or years of battling these various groups, they are just wiped out in a 24-hour or a little over 24 hours, because the sun stands still, right? Period of time. It's just awesome to see how the Lord went before them and prepared the ground and the people. Brothers and sisters, I don't have as much time today to cover all the other chapters, but I just want to say in this, you see the Lord's hand of deliverance. You see how He had already struck fear in the enemy, and the land is being given over to them quickly. And again, we don't need to fear. When God has called us to a task, He's going to equip us. God's not going to call you to do something that He has not either prepared you for or equipped you for. We have to be satisfied, though, with what the Lord has given us and trust that He will go before us. He will fight the battles for us. We merely need to join Him. We might have to go out and get physically active. You're not going to have a tribe in the deepest, darkest jungles that the Lord sends you to, that you're not going to have to walk up some mountains and through some valleys and through some swamps to get there. And you're going to get tired at times. But the Lord, if He sent you there, He sent you there for a purpose. You might not even see the fruit of why He sent you to such a place right away. And I say this from personal experience. There was almost a 9-year period between the time that I had served in Belize, Central America, till I was back here in the U.S. and began to hear of fruit that came out of my 7 years living in a Mayan Indian village. Well, I still know that now, even to this day, that work still continues to go forth. And I see that in others who, one who turned to the Lord just over a recent time period and now serves Him, sharing Christ with others. A young man, at least when I was there many years ago, that I could see a lot of promise in, but he would not yield to the Lord at that time. But now he is. And as word of the life change that's come in him reached me through yet another whose life had been changed and now plants churches even here throughout the U.S. Well, you never know what the Lord has before you. And that's a treasure of me being able to find out what fruit came out of my time there. But I know that all I can do is be present where the Lord has called me to be. And I may or may not see what the end results are. It's only an extra blessing to see the end results, because the great blessing at first comes from just being obedient to Him, being where He has called me to be. Brothers and sisters, I do hope that your day is going well. Until tomorrow, God bless.